Hello, beloved listeners. This is Adrienne coming on to tell you about our next episode, which is a repost of a conversation or co-post of a conversation that I just had with Dr. Ayana Johnson, who is the author of All That We Can Save and the new incredible text, What If We Get It Right? We got to sit down in Detroit, which was my first time being back for a couple years now. And this was a conversation that happened a few days before the presidential election. Tensions were running high, the energy was high, and you can feel it. We're a little bit chaotic, we're silly, we're giggling a lot, that kind of terrified, like, let's just laugh. But it was a very balm for the soul kind of conversation, and it felt like connecting with someone who we're on the same path. We're on this path. She's part of our journey, and we're part of hers. The event took place at the Urban Consulate in Detroit, the Garden Theater, and it was hosted by Orlando P. Bailey, Emmy Award-winning journalist, co-host of Authentically Detroit, executive director of the nonprofit local newsroom Outlier Media, and we wanted to share it. It's going to be on the What If We Get It Right podcast that Ayana Johnson hosts. We also wanted to have it here because we think that you all will really benefit from it. And if you want to learn more about any of the people involved, you can look me up, you can look up Ayana. If you look up What If We Get It Right, which you should all buy and listen to. And you can also check out urbanconsulate.com to learn more about what they're doing in Detroit. This episode was produced and edited by Nora Sachs, Ayana Elizabeth Johnson, with recording help in Detroit from Afroteen. So enjoy. We love y'all. Talk to you soon.
We're actually really thrilled to have you both here tonight, and thank you for writing two amazing books that I read cover to cover. Loving Corrections, I loved it, and What If We Get It Right? They rhyme so well with each other, right? So I want to ask this question that Grace Lee Boggs always asked, right? What time is it on the clock of the world? And what is on your hearts this evening, like in this moment, as we sit in this moment? What time is it on the clock of the world, and what's on your heart? She said no. Adrienne gets home court advantage. Ayana was like, nah.
Like, nope.
I love the question, though.
I love this question.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of my favorite things that Grace used to ask us. You would never go to Grace's house and sit in her house, and she would not ask you, what time is it on the clock of the world? What time is it on the clock of the world? And every time I'm asked the question, a different thing comes. For me right now, it feels like we're in a birthing analogy. Contractions are happening, motion is happening. The part of us that wants to move towards life is starting to drop down into a very dark portal, and it feels scary, and we don't know what's on the other side of the portal, and it feels like everything that has sustained us is falling apart around us, and I think we're there, right? And I think that we want to be the mom, or we want to be somewhere else. We want to be the doctor. We want to have a lot more control than we actually have right now. But I think part of it is trusting that there is a portal and there is a way through, and that life, babies, know something about getting through and getting into the world. As a doula, it's the baby did something to help find its way out. The baby knows what time it is when it's time to come. The baby knows. So I'm some part of our species understands we've got to get through this portal, and some of us are paying attention. So we're the little fractal cells in the baby body that are there's life, there's something to move towards. And we might scream when we get there, but there's something on the other side. I think that's the large thing. What's on my heart, being in Detroit, in Michigan, is that I've been watching from afar the bravery of the movement here for Palestine. And I just want to say I love you all so much, everyone who's been participating in that and trying to figure out, we have to hold this line right now of saying no to genocide and saying no to fascism and saying no to MAGA and saying no to anything that's going to break the earth's heart and break our heart. And it's not clear all the ways to do that right now, but I appreciate the dignity of the stance that has emerged from this place. It's righteous, and it honors the grief, and it honors what's really happening in the world. And I know that it might feel very hard in this moment to be holding that stance, right? Because there's so much finger pointing and just so much going on. But the genocide is happening, and it's not good for the earth. and it's not good for the future, and it's true. So that's on my heart. And then love is on my heart. I do think love is part of the path. When I was reading, listening to you have these conversations, I was just like, the people who love the earth are going to keep finding each other and loving the earth that's in each other. And that's why when you and I met, it's like, of course, we're siblings in the work of our lives. And so I already love you, and I'm so grateful to see you shining so brightly. So just getting to be in your presence is, I'm geeked out.
So is everyone here. We're all geeked out. It's your turn, Dr. Ayana.
Man, this is truly just such a treat. I've been on a book tour for something like 54 days now, 20-something cities, and arriving in Detroit had like a very specific sweetness because, yes, we have been fangirling each other for years on the internet, and so like getting to have a conversation in person for the first time is exciting. And because I live in Maine now and I like miss Black people. To be honest.
And I mean that.
I'm like very Black in Maine, which is like,
power to the people.
I'm trying, to hold it down for the state, but I'm not up to the task.
Did you know that Grace loved Maine?
No.
So Grace loved Maine, and she actually has a book called Conversations in Maine.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And every year, and I went a couple times, every year she and a couple people from Detroit would go over to Maine, to this island off the coast of Maine.
Which one?
That's a great question that I'm sure is in the book, and I should know,
We'll
but
debrief
I'll
on
find
this.
it.
Yeah.
I'm at that perimenopausal state where that kind of thing is not available.
No.
But I went there.
Quickly.
And what we would do is we would bring all of our groceries on a boat and everything we needed for the week. And for her, it was always so important to have gin and tonics at 5 o'clock every night. You could do whatever you wanted to during the day.
Respect that.
But at 5 o'clock, you need to come together, have a gin and tonic.
Especially in the summer.
And talk about the world. Yeah. And then we would have been in that's the only time where you can jump in the ocean. And it's like, this is nice because it's cold.
It's cold. It's cold
Yes.
all year long.
But anyway, I thought you should know
Yeah.
that Maine is a connective point.
And Maine has an incredible history of Blackness too. I mean, there were islands in Casco Bay, Maine, owned by Black people. The KKK was not a fan of that. Burned that shit to the ground. And there were beautiful, thriving interracial fishing communities in Maine 100 years ago. And so, yeah, Maine has an interesting history. For anyone who wants to know more about that, I learned about it through a podcast called 99 Years. Samuel James is the host, and he has the most bass, mellifluous, anything he says is amazing, and he's a musician. But to attempt to answer your question, I think the thought of the people who love the earth finding each other is really soothing. And at the same time, your birthing metaphor, I guess I don't have... It feels more hopeful than I am. I mean, this is a really hard time to be a human.
Your book is making me hopeful.
Which
so
is
sorry.
hilarious to me because
Listen, I wish y'all, my microphone ain't working, but I could talk loud.
But literally in the book, toward the end, Ayana's like, fuck hope. She's like,
fuck hope, show me your strategy.
Yeah,
was it
I'm also a
implementation
strategist.
is the most sexy word? That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Implementation.
Yes.
I mean,
It's hot.
It's the policy wonk way of being show me the money. You know? What
love
are you
that.
actually doing? Swipe right on electricians, you know? How are we making this clean energy conversion, right? And so when I think of the birth metaphor, and especially in the moment of reproductive freedoms getting torn apart, I'm thinking this is going to be our nation's a very brutal birth and portal for our nation in a way that I want to trust that the baby will come out okay and knows like how to, but I'm just really unsure.
Well, and it's true. Birth is coming up to the portal between life and death, and you never know if everyone's going to make it, right? And I think we're already in a place where the climate changes that are happening, it's like everyone's not making it. Every place is not making it. What is going to make it?
And we thought there were safe places.
There's not.
That are demonstrably not that anymore. And it's part of the reason I moved to Maine, was if I was going to buy a house and a little bit of land, it made sense. But we'll see. I mean, I look at the graphs of like the difference between the one of two people are going to be the next president, and literally the graph of greenhouse gas emissions from our country wildly diverges depending on who we elect as president. Yeah. And that is a very crazy thing to see as a scientist who can cry looking at graphs. Because I know what that shit means for us. The people we care about, for the places we love. Like, what's going to burn? What's going to drown?
Well, yeah, my book tour started in Asheville, in North Carolina. And people who were at the event are no longer with us, And it's like fast, and you're up in the mountains, and you're homesteading, and you just know you're good because you're in the mountains, and we don't get hurricanes in the mountains in North Carolina. So, but I think that that's also part of it. Part of why I want to persist in the birth metaphor, I think, a little bit, is there's a way that something is already taking place, and we do have some choices, but there's something that's already happening. And as a doula, there's always a moment where the mother would look at me and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go home. I'm good. This is, I thought I wanted to do it.
It was a cute experience. I think I've had enough.
I don't like it. And I feel like that is part of the feeling, right? Is there's some people who are like, if I stick my head in the sand or if I'm in denial, that'll be a way through. It's actually no. The parents who have the best births are the ones who are like, okay, let me come into reality with what is. What is the baby's not moving down. We have to pivot. The reality is the baby's got an umbilical cord around its neck. We've got to pivot. We have to be with what is, because that's the only thing that will make sure that life is the outcome here, if it's possible. And I think that's where we align. Is I'm just like, the pivots we need to make right now are dire and clear.
And holding that complexity, right, that you described, like between not supporting genocide and wanting to rebuff fascism at any cost, right? I mean, and that's been a particularly hard thing for me to deal with as a person with, a public intellectual.
You're such a public
You
intellectual.
are a luminary.
It's hilarious to me.
Both of you are.
To say those words out loud, but like I think in public, I'm thinking right now, I don't know what's gonna happen next. We're all in this moment together, but it's like, because people have so much trouble holding multiple things at once, the more I talk about other issues, the harder it is for people to hear my core message. And that is a trade-off that I grapple with, because of course I care about other people's lives, well-being, the health of the planet, the health of the ecosystems, right? But there's this
this retaliation. Like, no, you stick to sports. You don't get to be social justice-y. Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, you stick to, yeah.
And I mean, I do have the grace of like, my remit is planet Earth, so I mean, good luck telling me to stay in my lane.
Yeah, it's broad. But no, but I get what you're saying.
But still, right?
Yeah.
Like, stay out of geopolitics, right? Or like, you're saying this about the difference between these two candidates. You clearly don't care about Palestinians. And I'm like, what? Yeah. How could we jump to that conclusion that my heart is stone? Anyway, I've just been thinking a lot about like how we can hold change, how we can not cancel each other. All of your books.
And lovingly correct, right? Because you issued a loving correction.
And not even like correct, but just lovingly interact.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Well, and I think part of how I was reading your book was I think of what we're doing, the loving correction, as a course correction, right? That it's like we've gotten off course as a species. We've been off course for so long that we think this is our nature, right? That we're like, oh, we are capitalist. We are colonizers. We are constantly growing. We are addicted to plastic. We are that. And we forget that there was a before, right? That there's
And
ways.
it wasn't that long ago.
And it wasn't
for the
that
plastic
long ago.
bit anyway.
No, it wasn't that long ago. We've been in this, but we've been moving off course, right? And so this idea of like, oh, we have to course correct to be in alignment with a future. And I wonder, well, you're in charge of the questions, but I mean, this is one that I
Orlando has the world's hardest job today.
I know, I'm like, sorry.
We really appreciate you.
Yes, but I do think that, this idea of course correcting to the future, I keep getting stuck in the humility of the reality of like, oh, like even if you and I become the Beyonce and Rihanna of the world, of the ideal world.
Which one am I?
Do you smoke weed?
Occasionally.
Okay, so you're Beyonce and I'm Rihanna.
My question was going
Wait,
to be...
but are you Caribbean at all? Because I'm half Jamaican, so I kind of want to lean Rihanna.
I mean,
We
I
could discuss
be
this
the
later.
Beyonce. Obviously, I don't mind. I do have a Virgo Sun, Scorpio Moon,
I'm
from Texas.
I'm a little more uptight. I'll take Beyonce. It's very controlled.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like I'm like Rihanna. I'm like, girl, everything I read, like we're gonna do it somehow, because we're here. So we're the ones who are gonna live through
But this is the collab the world needs, though. Also,
But that's what I was saying.
my God.
So even if we became like the mega stars of Idea Land, and people
Okay.
were all like, yes, climate,
There we go.
love, peace, da-da-da.
Yes.
Even still, we would only be able to impact so many people.
So many.
The humility of it is like, it doesn't matter unless we get all of you with us, and then all of you go get like this many people with you, and so on and so forth. Like that humility that it's like, if you're not down for community and for organizing, then it doesn't matter how brilliant you are or what you think or how brilliant your vision for the future is. If you can't compel anyone else to join you in that walk, it doesn't matter. And so that's the thing for me, is always being like, okay, here's my best ideas, but does it mean anything to you? Does it change your life? If it's not changing your life, then I need to go back to the page, or I need to figure out, should I just be an herbalist or something else, But it's like, how do we do something that's meaningful enough and also humble enough to be like, there's room here for you.
Yeah. I want to go back to a point that you were making about how we ascribe identity to ourselves. And I want to go back to your formative years and talk about who raised you. I mean, both of you have, I think you guys...
a white mom and a black dad in both cases.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, which is interesting.
But you have an amazing story about learning from your dad and your book, and I get a glimpse of what your parents were like and how they had to fight for their love with the conversation between you and your sisters. Sort of take us back to, those formative years. Who raised y'all? Because I want to know if they knew
Sounds like an
they were
indictment of our
raising
character. Who raised you?
luminaries.
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking about humility, and to me, like that's the through line with these questions. My parents were very humble in some ways. My dad had a little bit of bravado. I mean, the double-buckled churches shoes and like the suits. He was an architect, He had like impeccable style and this sense of like, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Of course, architecture is one of the most insular and racist fields. And so the like, you have to be twice as good to get half as much thing was always very clear to me. But it was also, I had a very charmed childhood. There are a lot of people who are always like, but what's your trauma when they hear my childhood story? I'm
Oh
like,
my
actually,
gosh.
like, it was good. I'm so sorry to disappoint you.
I'm so sorry that I don't have trauma narrative
I
for you.
drew a lot of symmetrical abstract art. And, hung out in my backyard playing with worms and digging up the tulip bulbs and like all that stuff. in a rough neighborhood in New York City, which is now perhaps the biggest gentrification swing, Fort Greene. But my little tiny world with me and my parents, I'm an only child. I have a half-sister who's 18 years older, so I never lived with her. It was safe and creative and encouraging, and the only thing my parents were super clear about was you got to put in some effort. Like, cute, you have these natural abilities, so does basically everyone, and you have to give back. And what I'm so grateful for is they made that wide open. Because you can contribute to society, to community, to justice in innumerable ways. And so they were just like, to whom much is given, much is expected. You have to give back, but you can decide how. My mother, however, was a high school English teacher for 37 years before she retired and became a farmer.
Right, she's homesteading.
Yeah, permaculture, homestead farmer. She just moved in with me and we got chickens and she's plowed up the entire lawn.
You got chickens?
10 chickens, and the lawn has been literally like plowed up. There's seaweed being put in there to rehabilitate the topsoil, and like who knows what sort of hopefully wildflower meadow will emerge at the end of this, or vegetable garden. But it was, from her, the sort of like books are so important to how we see the world, to how we understand people from different places. And also this sense of like you just keep showing up from both of them. You just keep doing the thing. And the phrase that's coming up for me over and over again, which I'm like, where in my recesses of my brain did this come from, is Martin Luther King saying, I may not get there with you. And it's not a savior thing, because the thing that actually keeps me going in this work is knowing the humility of like, I cannot save the planet. It is impossible for me as a single person to do that. I haven't even tried, because I'm just like, let me do my little thing and try to make some ripples, right? But this, I may not get there with you, actually takes a lot of pressure off, right? Because it's like you do your part, and this is the work of generations, and you contribute to it, and you try to bring as many people along with you as you can. I now see myself, my primary role in the environmental movement is as welcomer. Like, come on in, we need you, you're welcome, whatever you have to bring, your skills, your resources, your networks, we desperately need that in the mix. So like, get in where you fit in and let's get this done.
Yeah. Adrienne, when your parents got together, was it a crime? No,
Almost.
Almost? Okay.
It had been legal, I think, for a decade.
Okay.
When they fell in love. My dad made eyes at my mom in a library. She was studying with a white boy, and 3 months later they were married.
That's what I'm talking about. Y'all talking about talking, we be talking for 3 years. Get on with it.
Listen, it's like you is or is you ain't, because
right.
I'm trying to have some babies. And my dad is a strategist, and my mom is an organizer, but neither of them really were that. Like my dad went into the military, and so he was a strategist, but within a very limited context. Military strategy is very antiquated in a lot of ways. He was the chief of war plans for the U.S. Army when 9/11 happened. My mom is an organizer at heart, and she's always like, just after Hurricane Helene, my grandmother, several uncles, and one of my dad's aunts, my dad's sisters, everyone was like displaced and evacuated and power out and all this. My mom's just been driving South Carolina, North Carolina, all over the place, taking supplies and doing all this stuff like that. Her spirit is organizer. But in the military, it was like organizing military families and stuff like that. And I grew up moving every 2 to 3 years to a new place, often in Germany, where everyone was mixed, but mixed with different things. And then a lot of black and white, and black. Everybody was like, anywhere you go in the world, they want to have sex with black people. And the military allows that to happen. So these were conversations when I was younger. It's so weird to like try to...
just call it like it is.
Yeah, it's really weird to go back and be like, well, you asked me...
I have lost control of this conversation.
This is where
Somebody help me.
The reason I think it's important to name this, right, is because I grew up in an environment where all these people who were like, you're my enemy, but you're also the father of my children, or you're my enemy, but we're building family together, and we met because of war, but now we're together and we're building family. So the norm for my life was all these situations that were like, we're an impossible story, we're an unlikely story, we're a mixed race family from the deep South. You know, my parents both were like, we're not allowed to look at each other, and then they did. So I always say that I was like, I was born into impossible love story, and I was surrounded by other people who also had been born into impossible love stories. And then growing up, then I started to come into a much more binary world. And it's always been so interesting to me to try to navigate this binary space when I know something else also coexists and is happening already. And almost everyone I know, whether the mix is direct, where you're like, oh, these two opposites, I think everyone comes from mixing of cultures, mixing of religions, mixing of something. But we tell these stories about ourselves as if that's not the case. And as I was listening to you, I was like, my work also feels like when you were talking about that, like you commit wholly to the work, and you really let go of, you know, controlling the outcome and saying like, I'm going to just do this. I'm proud of you that you never thought you were going to save the world. I definitely thought I was doing it for a while, and I had to learn. Emergent strategy really was when I was like, humble yourself. You're a fractal, but everyone else is a fractal too. Shape change, you know.
This is so funny because my parents' story is like their best friends were dating, and my dad was like, I want to meet who my friend's dating. And so they had like a double date at his apartment in Brooklyn, and there was like a lot of white rum and a lot of reggae, and it was like the mid-'60s. And my mom was like, Jamaican culture seems fun.
I mean, she's not wrong.
She's not wrong, right? And so it was like a very much like in the melting pot of like Brooklyn in the 60s. But I was not raised around a lot of interracial folks. I was the weirdo.
Yeah, Adrienne, you specifically named this in the book about both sides of your ancestry and you having both sets of blood, right? And, you know, carrying that tension of responsibility and the nuance that comes with having both sides.
It's so important.
But you also name the privilege that you have.
Absolutely.
Right? And so is that the role, to understand the privilege that you have and leverage it?
I think that there's a couple of things, because not all multiracial people have privilege, right? And so I think one of the things is you can never have the conversation as if class doesn't exist or isn't there. My parents were a mixed class relationship as well. My dad came from poverty and my mom came from a middle class family that had gone towards the upper echelons and then kept falling back from it. And so I was raised with this access, and then my dad became an officer in the military, where if you're an officer, even though you don't make more money, you get trained. I see some folks nodding, they're like, oh, I know. You're the officer's kid. You live in a different kind of housing, and you learn how to do all the forks and all that stuff, right? Like you learn how to have a formal meal and how to host things. But so the privilege that I have now as an adult feels like a different thing, where I'm like, oh, like the imprint of having a white mother creates a different familiarity when I'm talking to white people, especially wealthy white people. There's a way that they can read and understand me that I didn't understand. For a long time, I was just like, I don't know. They just listen to me. I don't know. And, you know, just having to really take ownership of like, oh, there's something that I can't necessarily see in myself that they recognize and they feel familiar with. And sometimes we'll make them sloppy or slippery, right? We're like, oh, I can get away with this with you. And then there's a way with Blackness and with Black community that I've also had to be like, okay, like I'm always trying to figure out how to take up as much space as I can as a Black woman and as little as I can as a mixed race woman, if that makes sense. The responsibility of all Black people, I think, in the world is to take up as much space as possible, because we are recovering from genocide. We are repopulating. We are reclaiming culture. We are making something on the other side of a portal, right? Like slavery was a portal. Slavery was an impossible situation. There's no way we were going to survive, but here we are. There's ancestors that I'm sure thought that was the end, but here we are. So there's something about taking up as much space as we can and saying we have visions of our existence and ourselves in the future that's very important. But then when I am uplifting people, I'm always looking to how do I uplift people whose Black experience is even Blacker than mine. So I think there is that both and, but I also think there's something that has been uncomfortable to sit with, where it's like, I can't leave my white family behind in ignorance. And it feels, I'd love to. I've tried. I've been like, you know what? Y'all are voting for Trump, and I just can't talk to you for a while. And I'm like, oh, if I'm not talking to you, there's no one else who thinks like me in your entire world. And that means that no one is piercing through the news blanket that is over you, that is full of misinformation and misdirection. It's amazing to me how many times I'll go have conversations with my family and be like, that's what you think happened? Because that's not what happened. And there's information on like what did happen, but I think we leave people behind. And I think for good reason, we're like, I can just leave you behind. But I think so much of where our work collides and combines is this idea that like, we have to be welcoming as many people as we can, no matter what they've been up to, into this path to the future. And we have to say the cost is to learn some things about yourself and your role in this world.
Yeah. I want to talk about the books, because that's why we're here. We've been having a good conversation, though.
We're always talking about the books.
We're always. But, you know, I guess my question is, what had been missing from the discourse and the zeitgeist that served as the impetus for What If We Get It Right and Loving Corrections? Ayana, I'll start with you.
Briefly on your book and then on mine. What I see as what was missing is literally that mix of loving and corrections, and just having this understanding of like the role for each of us in like where that is appropriate, right? Like in the same way that you and I have certain training and access and the fancy resume and the schools and whatever, and the seeing these white people like, who are like, what are they doing? You're like, oh, that could very easily be my cousin. So let me just like reframe, right? It is my cousin. That has such a huge role to play also in environmental work, because we are now at the point where most people are like, oh, we're really screwing up the planet. Climate change is serious. The ways that we're destroying ecosystems and producing all this waste are serious problems. And yet we so resist any sort of correction to our behavior, even when it would be us doing the self-correction. Like the number of people who come up to me with guilt. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. You already know what the right thing to do is. This is a confessional. Like, just go do the thing. Like, I don't need to tell you, like, there's no amount of, like, rosaries that will get you where you need to go. Just do the thing, you know? I'm sure I have, like, so many generations of, like, Irish Catholic guilt.
Oh, my God. You lost her.
Between the Irish and the Jamaican, like, you can only imagine. But the opportunity there is also to like lovingly correct ourselves and lead by example in how we approach all of these complex issues. So for me, this conversation that is not going as you planned is actually the perfect segue into answering this question, because I was like, if I'm going to write a climate book, which I have somehow signed a book deal to commit to writing, and I've spent the money, so I have to do. What does the world actually need a climate book? Yes. And if I'm going to do this, how can I make an offering that would otherwise not be made? Like, what is the perspective that I can bring to this that is not already covered, right? Like, we don't actually need another book of bad news. We don't actually need another technical book. We certainly don't need another, like, technology will save us book. And so every round of edits was, how do I put more of myself into this book, which is not as a trained scientist, is not how I would approach this normally. But I realized, like, the more personality I put into it, the more sassy footnotes I add to it, the playlists, the art, the quotes. This is, like, low-key the blackest climate book. It is Audre Lorde, it is Maya Angelou, it is Adrienne Marie Brown as the people who are quoted in this book.
That was my answer. A reporter asked me, why did you choose this book out of all the climate books
It's the
that
black.
came out? I was like, it's black. She black. Honest to God, I'm quoted. Yeah.
And so there's a sense of like a girl raised in 80s and 90s Brooklyn is writing a climate book. Yeah. What is that climate book? Right? Who like has all of the formal academic training, but also like desperately wants to welcome people in. And so in order to do that, I had to put as much of myself into the book as possible, which is not my normal
And
MO.
you did so beautifully.
But the one sentence answer to the question is there wasn't enough of talk about solutions. It was all apocalypse, no what if we get it right.
Adrienne, same
Yes,
question.
yes.
Loving corrections, like what was missing? And I guess I'll layer on top of that question. I think we love to correct without the love first, right? Is love required before you seek to correct?
It depends what you're correcting. It depends the relationship. So just one sentence before I hop into that on your book, because I've been listening to it and I've been feeling so hopeless and so sad. Like I actually, on my podcast recently with my sister, I was like, I'm sad, Adrienne, now. Like I've always been happy, Adrienne. I've always been joyful and positive, Adrienne. And I'm so heartbroken right now. Hurricane Helene hitting after this year of genocide and watching how obliterating it was, I was heartbroken. And I needed this. I needed it to not just be you, but all these other people who are like, I can see from this side what we can do, and I can see from this side. It's just so brilliant. And I'm so tired of one person talking at me. I'm trying to I'm like, I want a conversation all the time. So I just want to say, when I saw that when you started announcing, I was like, thank God this book is coming. I need it so bad, and then the timing is just right. So loving
the collective wisdom is the moment.
It is
what we need. Yeah,
that's what we need, right? And the idea that like none of us has the answer, but all of us have part of the answer. And for me, the loving corrections piece is like when I did my facilitation work, which for 25 years that was my primary thing, was being like I'm physically holding the space for movement workers, environmentalists, folks to come together, vision, change, conflict, all this stuff. And the feedback I would get was like the thing I was good at was this little dragon loving move where I'd be like, oh, no, we're not doing that. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. You're just going to come over this way and let me get you back on track because you just said something that now takes us away from what we're here to do. And it was always very clear to me that like this group is here to do a particular thing. They might not even know quite what it is yet, but I can feel it. I can feel what they're here to do, and that's not it. So I was trying to figure out in this book, I was like, okay, I keep finding these things emerge that are that kind of move that I want to do, but I'm not a facilitator anymore. How do I do this move? I'm going to write it as an essay. I'm going to write a letter to men. We're going directly to the main problem. We're like, let's start at the beginning. In the beginning was the man, and
she got us
and
together.
In the end was the matriarchy.
you know I don't think that. Anyway, but so I had this feeling of like, what is it like to write it, and can I facilitate from the page? And what I keep finding is that the discourse in the social media realm, right? So I was politicized before social media by people who loved me enough to sit down and be like, no, baby girl, that's not it. That's not even any close to it. Let me have you read some Bell Hooks, and let me have you read some Angela Davis. And do you know about communism? Do you know about socialism? Do you know, like there's just whole other ways of thinking. I had people love me to wisdom. And however wise I am now, it's because someone loved me, and then someone else loved me, and someone else loved me. So the book for me is trying to do that, to be like, I know a lot of y'all are getting politicized on TikTok, and you think that discourse means yelling at someone in a comment and reducing them to something you can't understand and taking the thing and twisting it, and it's all bots and trolls and comment farmers anyway. Let me speak to you like a person who loves you and wants you to get together because I need you to come join our movement. And I love that you said your job is welcome, because I think of that too. That I'm like, I was like, movement, y'all keep doing movement. And I'm going to try to go get more people to want to be part of it, right? And show you like there is a way to be in it and to stay in it, and then learning how to fight. Everyone's so mad at each other. And we actually do have some really important battles that we need to have. We have things that can no longer continue, but they will only stop if each of us in our private lives, when we're at a kitchen table, when we're in our lover's bed, when we're, in spaces with our friends, it's only going to happen if people in those private spaces are like, I'm willing to have a good, loving fight with you. Let's hold hands.
That's what I'm worried
and
about.
battle.
This is what I was actually thinking when you asked your first question. On the clock of the world, I feel like we're tired. Like we've been fighting and fighting
We're
and
so
fighting,
tired.
right? I saw our friend Dream Hampton post on Instagram the other day, like the human body was not made to withstand 3 Trump candidacies.
I agree.
Like it's just too much, like hate to fight, all these different fronts to fight. And so there's a part of me that like, I do feel like both of our books are a useful offering in this moment. I believe that. But at the same time, I'm like, how can we be expected to have the resilience and bandwidth for these conversations that require a significant amount of energy and devotion and care?
I do feel like relationship is actually the thing. And that's also what keeps us from being too tired. So I have people in my life who are like, Adrienne, I see what you've been doing over this past year, and you look tired and you sound tired and you sound heartbroken. So I have friends who are now like, you're not allowed to be on social media for more than this much each day. Really minimize what you put out. You've already given enough into this conversation about this right now. There's nothing else you're going to say in the next 4 days that's going to like, just rest. And the same thing I'm saying to you. You just have toured. You've given us this huge,
4 more
huge
days,
gift.
all in.
And I'm telling you what shows you're going to watch when
see.
you're binging.
I know, she's giving me some
in bed.
trashy TV recommendations.
Okay, I can't wait.
Hibernation Winter.
Let me come in and say that
Orlando!
sing. Something your sister said, Adrienne, that I think rings true, that even though you're tired, she said something that I so recognize in you, that you still have the wonder of the world in your eyes.
I'm in love with it.
That energy, right? And so that leads me to our final question, and then we're going to have a little bit of audience interaction. And I want to read it because I want to get it right. Ayana, your book, What If We Get It Right? You ask, what if we act as if we love the future? Adrienne, you ask, what does it look like to imagine a future where we all get to be here, not causing harm to each other? Of course, there are other entire sections of both of your books unpacking these questions in greater detail. But if you could share just a few thoughts here to whet our appetites, what does getting it right in relationship and in loving correction, getting it right for our climate future, what does that look like? Ayana, you look like you turned into something. So are we going to get to hear you read something?
I was just thinking, there's some things that you write and you're like, I think I put it best when I had the time to think through the words. So my answer to this question is the last chapter of the book. It's called Away from the Brink, which at one point was the title for the whole book. After it was, What Do We Become? How Humans Survive Humanity, which probably would not have been a New York Times bestseller, but
No, but I love that.
But that's the real title.
That is so good, though. We need like a T-shirt or something of
I
that.
feel like that's the book we write together.
Oh my God. Okay.
We were going to have such a chill 2025.
You heard it here first.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited to write that book with you. Okay.
I see my colleague Jenna Brooker in the room. She's going to break this story.
They've committed.
break it.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. Okay, but
Okay, I'm going to give you
words.
a few little tidbits from this. If we get it right, the world is a lot more green, more full of life. If we get it right, the combustion phase of humanity is over. If we get it right, we have relocalized and we eat well. If we get it right, our homes are comfortable. The future is not drafty. If we get it right, there is no traffic in cities because there are so few cars in cities. There is a sailboat renaissance. If we get it right, coastlines are greener too. And the tyranny of the minority is over. The climate-concerned majority rules. As both climate and technological change remake our world, we instituted a universal basic income. If we get it right, there are fewer desk jobs. Electricians do very well on dating apps.
And get paid like basketball players?
They already do. It's very lucrative, the trades, y'all. Don't sleep on this. If we get it right, the pace of life is more humane. Biophilia and biomimicry flourish in a virtuous cycle with the thriving of biodiversity. If we get it right, culture has caught up with our climate reality. Design is planet-centric, not human-centered. If we get it right, even with all these changes, the world and our homes are still familiar. It's the invisible systems that undergird our lives, our energy, food, and transit systems, our methods of engineering, manufacturing, and building, and the policies that organize it all that have been overhauled. Regreening the world and rerouting in communities feels good. There's more collaboration, more knowing and being known, more sweetness. We lean into trial and error, into replication more than scaling. The world is a mashup of traditional and high-tech, old ways made new. The extractive fossil fuel economy is out. The renewable, regenerative economy is in. Humanity has backed off, made more room for other species, learned to share this magnificent planet. Our surroundings are verdant. Spring is not silent, it's cacophonous. We are putting the pieces back together, adapting to the climate-changed world with eyes and hearts open wide. We embrace possibility, continually moving away from the brink and toward answers to the grand question, what if we get it right?
I was like,
Adrienne, what about you?
I've figured out how we're going to write the book. I think we're going to do a series of conversations and just record them and transcribe them. It's going to be dumb. Okay, so the conclusion of my book, the closing of it, is From Fragility to Fortitude. And this occurred to me when I was facilitating the first emergent strategy gatherings, actually here in Detroit. I did a series of immersions. And one of the things I noticed is when people in movement were getting together, more and more what was happening was we were exposing our fragility. And the fragility looked like what Barbara Smith has talked about is we ran with the identity and dropped the politics. Like we were really showing up and being like, here's who I am and here's how you need to orient towards me, but not here's who we are and here's what we need in order to be with each other. So I was like, how do we move from fragility to fortitude? And I always think that movement should be this sanctuary and this practice ground where people are like, oh, I want to be a part of the future. And movement is a place where I can experience what that would be like. And movement is a place where I can be in this practice with other people. But that's not what movement has been in this period. It's been really divisive. You know, the Trump trickle-down effect, I think, of this Trump time has been this aggressive, divisive energy. So I think so much of what we're, and at the global level and at the interpersonal level and at the internal level, moving from fragility to fortitude in all of our relationships. That it's like this thing between us is not going to be broken because you say the wrong word. It's not going to be broken because you misunderstand me. It's not going to be broken even if we have a serious difference of opinion. We can hold on to each other and we can keep moving forward together. And I think we can get there, but I think it's a lot of people have to change a bit. And I think sometimes that's even harder than like, you know, a few people changing everything. You know, I'm like, I think that's what happens right now is like some people are like, I care about the environment. So me by myself, I'm going to get off the grid and do all this very extreme stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad you're that kind of person. But most people are not going to do that until they're forced into those conditions. You know, right now in Asheville, people are like, oh, we are living like that off the grid and with each other. And some people are like, it's kind of amazing what's happening between us. But for most people, I think what you said, it's like, I love that you said the invisible systems underneath. Like if the systems that hold us become just, become liberatory, become decolonized, then we can make this like just transition. And for most people, it'd be like, oh, it's just normal that I carry my cup and then I take the bus and then I do these things because it's easier for me to do that. That's the easier way to exist. And I love that there are places where that move is already happening from fragility to fortitude. I do see it. Getting off of social media has actually been so helpful because I'm like, oh, real people who organize lots and lots of people are actually very aligned on what to do right now. I think one of the things to remember from history about moving from fragility to fortitude, because it's a cycle, is in the past, it's only been the divergent efforts of each movement, the ones that seem to not be aligned, all converging at the same time. That is like some people have to be doing the large actions. Some people have to be inside talking to the bureaucrats. Some people have to be moving the money. Some people have to be holding the money accountable. Some people have to be making changes in their homes.
You know,
like
that's why I got a PhD in science.
That's why?
Because I wanted to do environmental policy, and the lawyers were doing it from their end, but the scientists were like, I'm not going to wear a suit and go talk to those people.
You're like,
and I was
okay, well, guess what I'll
I like
do.
to dress up. I'm in.
Yes.
I can be
Right?
helpful, yeah.
This idea of like, oh, if you find your role and you let other people find their role.
And respect it.
And you respect the fact that it's like, oh, that's how you're doing it. This is how I'm doing it. And in history, it takes all of these things that look like different strategies, but the timing has to converge. And I think we're in that moment right now where it's like, oh, even the issues we're working on, they're siloed in such a way it makes it seem like climate is something other than not genocide. It's not. Do you know what the end of climate catastrophe is? We all dead. Hello? So we're all on the same thing, right? We're trying to be alive until the sun blows up. And so, like, I think we can do better than we're doing now. And fortitude.
Adrienne Marie Brown, Ayana Elizabeth Johnson.
Orlando.
Until the sun blows up.
Until the sun blows up. It is going to blow up.